Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. If you want to be a huge help today, help support the content by hitting the like and subscribe buttons down below. And the first story of the day is by A Quiet Borderline. What happens when engineering students are asked to truck-proof a mailbox? Yes, I know there's a lot of mailbox stories on here, but I just learned the story from my dad involving my Uncle Dale, and I figured you guys would get a kick out of it. Years ago, back when Uncle Dale and Dad were university students, their engineering professor came to their class with a problem that needed solving. His mailbox was getting broken by someone driving by every night. He and his wife had put up something like 4 or 5 mailboxes, and all 4 or 5 times, the mailbox had been knocked over by someone driving a red truck. This professor offered extra credit to any group of students who could come up with a truck-proof mailbox that not only fit with city regulations, but within a budget of $20, which back then was a good-sized chunk of change. Well, if anyone here knows anything about engineers, as Dad puts it, they love solving problems, and if it's engineering students, they'll make it an experience to remember. Dad and Uncle Dale got together and got to work. They found a steel bar that fit within mailbox regulations, the posts have to be a specific height, width, and depth, and filled the inside with a mixture of concrete and steel rebars. Once the concrete had cured, they welded 8 rebars to the side of the bar, bent them half in, and stuck it inside a bucket. To add extra weight, they filled the bucket with the heaviest rocks they could find. As a finishing touch, they painted it brown and black to look like wood and put "the ugliest mailbox we could find on sale" on top, welding it down for good measure. They brought this monstrosity into class, or dragged it because it was so heavy, and told the professor to bury the bucket where the mailbox stood. Since they were the first to turn in their project, the professor agreed to give it a try. That night, the professor and his wife were awoken by a metallic bang, followed by a lot of cursing. They went outside and wouldn't you know it, there was that red truck speeding away, the mailbox still standing. At the base was a broken wooden baseball bat. 2 days later, the professor gets a bill in the mail for a hospital visit. Turns out when the passenger hit the mailbox, he did some serious damage to his arm and shoulder. They were planning on suing the professor, but the professor hired a lawyer who basically told the plaintiffs, "You're just going to admit that you were vandalizing the mailbox multiple times?" That shut them up. To the best of my dad's knowledge, the mailbox is still standing. The other students who still brought in mailboxes had theirs gifted to different professors throughout the town, and are also still standing. Now, I'm not sure if the act itself is legal. At least I've heard mixed messages in the past about these kinds of stories about the legality of putting a mailbox up like that. That said, what really saved this guy in the end was the fact that their only legal argument was, "Hey, I broke down these mailboxes plenty of times before without no trouble. This one broke my arm." If you had some jerk running your mailbox over every single time you put it back up, would you go to the same lengths to make sure they're not going to mess with it again? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Yoshua82. Party every night for a year? Okay. I went to school in California in the 90s. I bought a house 4 years ago in a quiet neighborhood. I had wanted to get into that neighborhood for years. My best friend lives there. It was a couple of blocks from my kid's school. It was a good neighborhood. Then COVID hit. My neighbors across the street were forced to move at the beginning of the pandemic before the eviction moratorium was in place. They were really good neighbors. We were friendly with each other and we were sad to see them go. So when the property owner rented to a new family, we were hoping we could cultivate a friendly relationship. Unfortunately, that was not the case. About a month after they moved in, the lockdown started. And that's when things went from 0 to 100 real quick. For the next year, every night there was a huge party. Cars down the street, music so loud you could hear it over regular house noise in every room in the house. My friend in the next cul-de-sac would text me regularly if the music he was hearing was my neighbor's. We tried to be civil. I asked politely. I brought them beer. I offered some killer 420. Eventually, they threatened me and my wife, so we started calling the police. Almost every night for 4 months, we organized with the neighbors, and they started calling the police as well. Eventually, the others gave up and started selling their houses because the renters were just that bad. We were still upside down on our place, so it wasn't an option for us. Eventually, the police told me that I needed to stop calling and that it wasn't their issue to deal with, that I was a bigger nuisance than the renters' music. It was at that time that the housing market was taking off. Houses were selling in my area for $40,000 to $50,000 over appraisal value. My wife and I looked at what we needed to make so we could move and listed our home for that. In 3 days, we had a handful of obscene offers to choose one, but it was the lowest offer that stood out to us the most. Their offer was a good $20,000 under the next lowest, but they sent a letter. I'm a sucker for a letter, especially one with a picture of a young pregnant couple and a dog, and a patrol car? Turns out the young man is a police officer newly appointed at the local PD, and he takes his patrol car home. I knew at that point that this was the family to sell my house to, money be darned. I moved out as the neighbors were throwing a huge party. The next day, the police moved in, and they haven't had another since. I drive by regularly on my way to my buddy's place. They just sit quietly in their garage looking bored. I make sure I honk and wave every time. Funny how the police will do something about it when they live there. If it's your problem, it's your problem. Stop calling us. Noise complaint? We don't do that at the police department. Is there a noise ordinance or not? This next story is by prorevenge Pro. Continue to rub out my drawings? Okay, have fun doing that every time with every resource. Back in year 9 of school in the UK many years ago, we had formed an after-school club that was supposed to be dedicated to maths, but we all had much more fun than we were supposed to. Every time, the maths challenges were very exciting to solve, and honestly sometimes it made us feel like top-tier mathematicians. So we got roughly 10 minutes free time to do what we wanted before it finished for the week. Naturally, we discovered that the one thing we all liked in common was Pokemon, so we held drawing contests on the whiteboards, about A4 sized. I chose Psyduck, always did. Think I can draw a Charizard? Not a chance. But we showed Sir, seeing as he liked them too, and he let the winner put up his whiteboard drawing on the cupboard top for the week. It was lovely because most of the time, my Psyduck won despite the fact that it looked like a mallard with a chopping board sewn to its face. Every time we wrote, "Do not rub off, approved by teacher," to make sure, and universally that was code for it to be fine. Bear in mind, there were 35 whiteboards to a class and 32 students. It was always lovely to see my drawing up there for the week, especially coming back on Monday, or if not, the others, because it was out of pure fun. Until that one day, we got a new cleaner. The following Monday in that classroom, the drawing was gone. I rummaged to see if it had fallen. It hadn't. I sought out the table next to me and its whiteboard stack, then saw the outline of the marker's path as these weren't new whiteboards. Anything drawn and left on there was left on there when rubbed off too, only in the white of the surface. It was the outline of my drawing. Okay, I thought, new cleaner doesn't understand. That's good, I'll let her know. And I did just that. I went up to her the next day and said, "Hey, are you the new cleaner of our classrooms?" And she said, "Yeah, what?" in her thick Yorkshire accent. I said, "Oh, it's just that the whiteboard drawings are permitted to stay up. They have been for a while. Please don't rub them off." They say, "If you've got a problem with me doing my job, I suggest you get that looked at." I said, "Beg your pardon?" "No, you're employed to do your job, sure, but respect it as well." I asked the year group manager if he had told her to, as he was essentially in charge of telling the cleaners what to clean and the staff what to teach this week. "No," he said. "I think it's perfectly fine if it's 1 or 2 whiteboards. Besides, there's a surplus in every classroom. If necessary, that's what they're there for." All right then. So every week we continue to draw our drawings with the aforementioned text and display it on top of the cupboard. Every week it would be rubbed off and it started to take the piss. What a load, especially when allowed. So starting then, I stood up for us and wrote a message on all 35 whiteboards. It read, "So you think it's funny to rub off our drawings even if permitted? Doing your job, are we? Well, I'm gonna make sure you're doing your job. Relax. I thought you enjoyed rubbing off these whiteboards. What's 34 more?" And the last one was a small drawing from all of us in the club, each of our own interpretation of a donkey. Because, you know, butt and all. All 35 boards were placed on top of the cupboard, and we left it there. We came in on Monday and they were all wiped clean and on their tables respectively. So we tested this out to see if she'd learned her lesson. I drew a Psyduck, left it on the cupboard, and sure enough she wiped it off. So we wrote on all 35 boards again. This time it read, "We thought you'd have understood this by now. Our drawings are permitted. Looks like you're perfectly able to rub these off though, so we'll let you succumb to your hobby. Enjoy, we'll do this every time." And that we did, 8 times. The last time it was only drawings of bats for silly bat, and I believe that was enough. So yet again I drew Psyduck, and to my surprise on the Monday back, it was up there still. Finally the message had gotten through. We continued to host the contest for the rest of the year. This is kind of a really random thing to mention, but this story reminds me of the series of images I saw where somebody graffitied on this brick wall, and then whoever owned the wall covered just the drawing in a big red square on this normally brick wall. And then every time the person graffitied over that, the person would come back and paint over it red. So they slowly started writing like red just outside the red box. And then they pressure sprayed it. So then they wrote the word red in the red and the word power wash above the red box. And it just kept going back and forth and evolving until eventually they just painted the whole building red. We'll just keep going back and forth until you actually deal with it. Our next story is by Lice Queen. Late for everything my entire life? Okay, bet. So my mom's been late for everything. Literally everything. Therapy appointments, 15 minutes. School sports events, 30 to 45 minutes. School, 10 minutes. I could go on and on. I'm adopting a little girl that my mother's fostering, and she's holding her over my head. You're not her real mom. I say, I'm her legal guardian. She says, you're nothing to her. So, said little girl's been staying with me part-time. She has a therapy appointment at 4, and I live 3 hours away. Mom wants me there at 3. I get off at 12, so not out of the realm of possibility. However, she only wants me there at 3 so she can interrogate my daughter on how I am as a mother. However, as we speak, it's 2:30 p.m. and I'm an hour away. We needed to stretch our legs for a while and now, oh no, we have to go straight to the appointment, then go home immediately afterwards. Now, I'm not an expert and I don't want to get too into family drama, but I don't think it's a good thing having somebody watching over the kid with such shady and manipulative behavior and trying to sow seeds of distaste or just trying to weirdly for some reason opinionate this kid against their mother or legal guardian if you want to be that technical. The whole situation just seems disappointing. This next story is by Playboy CG. Niece takes back her sister's flip-flops. We were on vacation this year at Gulf Shores. We stayed at a condo with private beach access. A lot of people left their shoes by the steps going down to the sand. My niece did the same as well as everyone. An hour later, we come in and the flip-flops are gone. Fast forward 2 days, my niece is still bummed because she really likes those flip-flops. My younger niece, 18, looks down at the pool and sees the stolen flip-flops. We dare her to try and get them back. The fearless little thing marches down and tells the lady those look just like her sister's flip-flops and asks where she got them. The lady said her little boy found them and brought them to her, so she just kept them. Needless to say, my niece got them back, told the lady she may want to get antibiotic cream because her sister has foot fungus. Lie. And we laughed hard, and to this day, my youngest niece has more balls than I do. I mean, kudos to the niece. You obviously saw something that was pretty clearly those flip-flops that got stolen. I'd be proud to know that I have a relative that is willing to just go out there, lay it on the line and say, hey, those appear to be my sister's flip-flops, can I have them back? And by the way, get some cream because there's some nasty foot fungus. And our final story of the day is by Dimos Fob. Lady steals my parking spot. So today I'm going to the store with my friends. I find some prime real estate parking. I line myself up and I turn my signal on, waiting for someone to pass. And of course, a white SUV takes it right as she pulls up, and when they were out of her way, but not mine. I was gonna say something, make a fuss, but part of me knew I was bigger than that, so I waited, even went into the store with this inconsiderate woman. The glare we all gave her with her attempt at obliviousness and obvious avoidance. We check out, leave, and as I pass her car, I pushed her passenger side mirror in, got in my car, and waited to see her get in her car as she wasn't too far behind us. She didn't notice and she'll find it inconvenient when she's driving off. The mild inconvenience will hopefully make her reflect. Make her reflect like the mirror. Alright. I don't know if she'll put 2 and 2 together, and I don't know if people like that are probably even using their passenger side mirror. That said, to some degree it kind of is like trying to intentionally impair their ability to drive. Like sure, they should have no problem driving around without it. But if there was ever that rare situation where it really could come in clutch, because they cut you off in a parking spot, they no longer have access to that. It's petty, but maybe too petty? I don't know. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.